What's up, guys? I'm BTC. Welcome back to the Respawn, where I answer your questions. Today we're talking maps with destructible objectives, power creep, and more. First question of the day, is Goats Comp basically dead at this point? No, definitely not. At the pro level, it's probably still the best comp. On the competitive ladder, on the upper bracket, it's still very viable, although it's kind of losing some ground. And in the lower bracket, it really doesn't matter. Overall, it is declining, but it's definitely not gone. It probably won't go away until Blizzard implements some sort of 2-2-2 roll lock. Should there be a hero that gets a temporary buff when he or she gets hacked or nano-nated? No, because there's just too much of a limitation to that sort of a thing. Like, you don't ever want to have any kind of character that only has an ability that is affected by a very, very small number of other abilities in the game. It would make that particular ability or that character very weak against everything else. Because if you have an ability that just never gets activated, or a passive or whatever that just never gets activated, then it's effectively worthless, and you don't want that. Next question, what are guilds? In the past, I've talked about Blizzard adding a guild system to Overwatch, and every time I do, I always see a couple of people asking what are guilds. So I guess if you've never played an MMO, you might not know what it is. Essentially, it's an extended group. You can create your own guild, you can invite people into it, and then you all have a special chat channel that you can use to talk to each other. You can then set ranks for the different people that are in it if you want to have different levels of leadership, and you can have other different little functions and stuff. If you want to know more about it, Google World of Warcraft guilds, and it'll probably tell you everything you need to know about a guild system. Now, would Overwatch have something exactly like that? Probably not, but there would probably be a lot of similarities in between it. Next up, do you think that the devs will allow the community to use old abilities in the workshop? I don't know. I don't really think so. So the way that it was explained with the workshop, because when it first came out, people were asking if they could take abilities from other characters and move them around. So you could have, let's say, a Soldier 76 with the teleporter ability. And they said, no, that's not how it works, because the abilities are loaded up when you pick the character. So when the character gets loaded into the game, that's when the abilities get loaded. So you wouldn't really be able to do that. They would have to attach those old abilities to the character so that when you load it, you also get that. It seems like it's a lot more technically complicated than just simply enabling it. Now, it's not to say that they can't or that they won't allow abilities to move from different characters and all that sort of stuff, but it's probably not going to happen anytime soon. Could a fourth role ever come to Overwatch? You mean like possibly a defense category? They already did that. They had 4 roles for a long time. The tank, support, offense, and defense, and there was just no point in it, so they combined offense and defense. Now, they don't need a 4th role. What they do need, however, are subcategories. They need to break support into healer and off-healer. They need to break tank into tank, off-tank, and bruiser, and damage needs a whole bunch of roles as well. So they need to have subcategories, but they don't need to have any big overall roles anymore. Can Reaper get Lifesteal from a melee? Yes, he can. How do you effectively use Amplification Matrix? First thing you need to know is it's not a super important ultimate that you need to hold on to, like a Transcendence or a Sound Barrier. You should be using Amp Matrix quite frequently. I'm not saying just waste it every single time you get it, but you should be using it quite frequently. Now, you can try to use it at the beginning of a fight when the enemy is using a lot of their abilities in order to try to put out a lot of damage to burst down your team, so that way you amp matrix and you start healing through it. It's going to keep your team alive. You can also use it to try to break the enemy barriers. It's quite effective at that. And also, whenever you position it, try to make it so that it's more than just you who's using it. You want to have a good spot where you and some of your team are able to use it. Also, you can set it up in front of a Reinhardt. He'll throw a Fire Strike and it will do 200 damage. That's a one-shot for most anyone he hits with it. Next question, what are quality of life changes? Sometimes you'll see this mentioned in the patch notes, or I'll say it when I'm reviewing the patch notes. Essentially, it's when they change a character and make it easier to use, but it doesn't affect the balance of the hero itself. It doesn't make it stronger or weaker. A good example of this was when they changed Zenyatta and they put his healing target and his Discord target on the screen on the bottom right hand side, so you now can see who has those orbs on them, and it just makes it a little bit easier for the Zenyatta player. It doesn't make him stronger or weaker or anything. It's just a nice little quality of life change. Next up, what does power creep mean? So power creep is when characters slowly get stronger over time. What ends up happening is you'll have one character, let's say Soldier 76 gets a little bit of a buff, and then he becomes the go-to hit scan character, so you just keep using that. Then Blizzard says, alright, well, we want McCree to be on par with Soldier, so we're going to give McCree a little bit of a buff as well. Well, now you can use Soldier or McCree, but what about Ashe? Ashe is kind of falling behind. Like, okay, so now we're going to give Ashe a buff to bring her up on par with Soldier and McCree. And it's just kind of this constant little leapfrog where these little tiny jumps here and there, and eventually characters just keep getting a little bit stronger over time. That's what power creep is. When do you think the next hero will come out on the PTR, tank or healer? I think it's probably going to be a tank, and it should come out, I think July is when it gets announced. Although Jeff Kaplan did say that they're going to rearrange some of the stuff that's going on in the summer. Now, he might have just been talking about the summer event itself, but it's possible they could be changing around the release of the next hero as well. But it should probably be sometime early July. Do you think a map where the attackers have to destroy an objective could happen? I think it would be really cool. I believe I've talked about this in the past, where you have the attackers have to go in and rather just simply capturing a point, they actually have to destroy some object, and the defenders have to use barriers or something else in order to actually defend that object. Now, the only problem with this is long-range characters. Particularly, we're talking about Widow, because you could have a Mercy just damage boosting the Widow from super far away, and she can just constantly be attacking it, and, you know, that just makes it kind of not really fun. So what they would have to do is manage all of the sight lines so that you have to be fairly close in order to damage it. Like, you could have Widow still damage the target, but she would have to be way closer because maybe there's buildings in the way or some other obstacles or something like that. So they would just have to design the map around that sort of thing. I think it definitely could work. Would it be better than just capturing a point? I don't know. It probably would be more interesting, at least. Next up, what unique CC from other MOBAs and games would you like to see in Overwatch? Now, I know a lot of people don't like CC, which stands for crowd control, by the way. This is things like stuns and sleeps and all that sort of stuff. Now, one of the characters that I made in my Hero Concepts, Brute, does have something that I borrowed from Dota, which is a movement damage thing. So he has an ability where he hits the enemies, and if they move, then they take damage. So it's not forcing them to stop, it's not like controlling their character or anything like that, but they get the choice, do they want to move or do they want to stand still? Because if they stand still, then they might be in danger from the enemy, but if they move, then they take damage. So that's a pretty cool, unique kind of CC concept. Another possibility is something called a banish, and that's when you use an ability on an enemy and it completely takes them out of the fight. But at the same time, they can't be acted on in any way. So it's kind of like using an ice block on an enemy. They can't attack, they can't move, they can't use abilities, but they also can't be hurt. So it's, you know, that trade-off. So it's a banish is what it's called. So I think that could definitely work in Overwatch. That's going to be all the questions for this week. Thank you to everyone who submitted one. Also, I see a lot of people still asking repeat questions. A lot of common ones are about copying or stealing enemy abilities or controlling enemy characters, all that sort of stuff. All of those questions have already been answered. There's a master list of every question that's ever been asked in any of the Respawn videos on my Discord server, so you can go and check that out. Also, I will post the question card for next week's Respawn videos this Saturday, and it is in the community tab of my YouTube channel. So again, go and check out the Discord for all the previous questions, and next Saturday, post a new one. Thanks for watching, and if you'd like to see more, subscribe and hit that bell so you don't miss anything. Also, come hang out in my Discord server and my Twitch live stream. Special thanks to my Patreon supporters. If you'd like to see what kind of cool VIP rewards you can get, check the links down below. And remember, always blame the controller, because it's never your fault.